Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're stepping into the world of human resource management, or honestly, even if you're just looking to sharpen your strategic edge, you've definitely encountered a massive sea of acronyms. But today, we're going completely in depth on one of the absolute most powerful frameworks out there. We're unpacking OKRs and HRM, a complete guide by Syed Amar Hussein Banori. My goal? I want to make this incredibly practical for you. By the end of this explainer, you aren't just going to know what this acronym means, you're going to be able to build this framework from scratch to literally transform how your teams operate. So here's our quick roadmap for today. First, we're defining OKRs and HR. Then, we'll dive into the road trip analogy. Third, real-world HR examples. Fourth, a restaurant punctuality scenario. And finally, number 5, OKRs versus KPIs. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Defining OKRs in HR, translating ambition into results.
Okay, so how do we actually take a massive, soaring ambition and translate it into a daily reality? Well, OKRs simply stands for Objectives and Key Results. In human resource management, this is your ultimate goal-setting framework. It completely forces everyone in the organization to clearly define 2 things. First, the objective, like what do you actually want to achieve? And second, the key results. How exactly will you know that you achieved it? A great way to remember this is that the objective is your destination, and the key results, those are your proof that you actually got there.
Let's contrast a couple of ideas here. Think about a classic, vague HR goal, something like improve employee performance. We see this all the time, right? But let's be honest, it's entirely unhelpful. It doesn't motivate anyone, and it completely lacks direction. Now, compare that to a clear, well-crafted objective. Build a high-performance culture within the sales department. See the difference. It answers the question, what do we want to achieve, with total specificity and energy? It gives the team a crystal clear direction to actually rally around.
But here's the thing. An objective on its own just isn't enough. We need the key results to answer how will we measure success. If our objective is that high-performance sales culture, we need undeniable proof. We aren't just guessing if performance improved, we're actively looking to see if performance scores jumped from 70% to 85%. We're checking if missed targets dropped from 30% all the way down to 15%. We're guaranteeing action by conducting 4 coaching sessions per employee each quarter, and we're measuring the cultural shift by looking for an engagement score bump from 72% to 82%. This specific combination, that's what makes the OKR system so ironclad. Section 2, the road trip analogy, visualizing your goals. Now, if that still feels a little bit abstract, don't worry at all. Let's anchor this using something we're all super familiar with, a simple road trip. Imagine you're planning a drive. You don't just jump in the car and steer aimlessly, right? You have a timeline and milestones. Maybe point 1 is to travel 300 kilometers on day 1. Point 2 is reaching Lahore by evening. Point 3 is arriving in Islamabad by 6 p.m., maintaining a solid average speed along the way. These milestones are absolutely critical. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole OKR framework. The destination you set in your GPS, reaching Islamabad, that is your objective. It tells you exactly where you're going. The milestones we just talked about, the speed, the distance covered on day 1, the time you reach certain cities, those are your key results. They act as the hard evidence that you're actually getting closer to your destination, rather than just driving around in circles. Bringing this analogy straight back into the HR office, you can see why HR shouldn't simply tell an employee, hey, become a better employee. That's literally like saying, go drive. Instead, HR and the employees sit down and map the trip together. The objective becomes the destination. Become a more effective team leader. The key results become the travel evidence. Completing 2 leadership courses, reducing team conflicts by 30%, hitting a 90% on-time project completion rate, and bumping team satisfaction from 75% up to 85%. You've just turned a vague wish into a highly measurable, totally actionable plan. Section 3. Real-world HR examples, recruitment, retention, and training. Now that we've got the mechanics down, let's look at how OKRs operate out in the wild across 3 core human resource functions. Let's start with recruitment. Say your company is hiring way too slowly. You don't just say, hire people faster. Your objective is to build a faster, more effective recruitment process. To prove you've actually done that, your key results might look a bit like this. Reduce the average time to hire from 30 days down to 18, double the qualified applicants per vacancy from 10 to 20, make sure 90% of interviews are completed within 7 days, and push the offer acceptance rate from 70% up to 85%. Suddenly, the recruitment team knows exactly what faster and more effective actually means in hard, undeniable numbers. Okay, but what if you're losing your best talent? The retention objective here is to create an environment where high-performing employees actually want to stay. How will HR determine if their retention strategy worked? By checking the key results. Did annual turnover drop from 20% to 12%? Did we conduct stay interviews with 90% of our high performers? Did overall satisfaction rise to 85%? And do 80% of employees now have a documented career development plan? If you hit those numbers, you know for a fact your retention strategy was a total success.
Finally, consider training. A lazy HR department just says, well, we need more training. A strategic HR department sets an objective to develop a more skilled and future-ready workforce. Their key results ensure 90% of employees complete required training, with an average of 20 learning hours per quarter. But crucially, and this is the big one, they measure business impact, improving post-training assessment scores by 25% and actually reducing work-related errors by 15%.
So, this crucial point is summarized perfectly by a quote from the source material. The focus shifts from how many training sessions did we conduct to what changed because of the training. Think about that for a second. This is a massive paradigm shift. You're no longer just tracking activities. You're tracking actual transformative business impact. That is the true power of an OKR in human resources.
Section 4. The restaurant punctuality scenario. Let's test your knowledge. All right, it's time to put you in the driver's seat. Let's do a quick interactive example to test your new knowledge with a real-world scenario. Imagine you're the HR manager of a super busy restaurant. Your employees are frequently arriving late for their shifts, causing absolute chaos before service even starts. And there is literally nothing worse than hangry customers, right? So what would your OKR be to fix this? Think about it for a second. Your objective is likely something pretty straightforward, something like improve employee punctuality. But remember, an objective isn't enough on its own. Ask yourself, how will you prove that punctuality actually improved? Well, if you came up with metrics similar to these, congratulations, you just successfully built an HR OKR. To prove punctuality improved, your key results might be to reduce late arrivals from 25% down to 10%. You might target achieving 95% on-time attendance overall. You could aim to reduce the average lateness window from 15 minutes down to just 5 minutes, and perhaps introduce a monthly attendance feedback session to ensure compliance. Building the OKR yourself makes the whole concept so much stickier than just reading some textbook definition, doesn't it? Section 5. OKRs versus KPIs, avoiding the beginner trap. As we move into our final section, we absolutely have to address the biggest trap beginners fall into when implementing this framework: confusing OKRs with KPIs. This distinction is so critical in HRM. Think about a KPI, a key performance indicator. It focuses on what we continuously measure. It's connected to ongoing, everyday performance and simply answers the question, how are we performing right now? Usually it's just a specific metric on a dashboard. Now, contrast that with an OKR. An OKR focuses on what we want to achieve. It's usually connected to improvement, ambition, or a desired change. It answers the bigger question, where are we actually going? Let's look at a very simple example to make this crystal clear. Say your employee turnover rate is sitting at 15%. That standalone metric is a KPI. It simply acts as a thermometer. It tells HR exactly what is currently happening in the organization. It's vital information for sure, but on its own, it doesn't actually change anything. To fix that KPI, HR has to attack it by wrapping it in an OKR. You set an objective to create a workplace where talented employees want to stay, and your key results become the strategic levers you pull. You aim to reduce that 15% KPI down to 10%. You target increasing engagement to 85%, and you mandate stay interviews with 90% of critical employees. The OKR clearly defines what needs to change and exactly how that success will be systematically measured. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from Syed Amar Hussain Benouri's guide. If you remember literally nothing else from this explainer today, remember this golden formula. OKRs equal ambition plus measurement. The objective is your ambition. What do I want? The key results are your measurement. How will I prove I achieved it? It's a goal-setting system that ensures your organization's highest ambitions are actually translated into measurable, undeniable reality. We've seen how powerful this framework can be for an entire organization, a recruitment team, or even a restaurant manager. But you know what the true beauty of OKRs is? They scale down to the individual just as effectively. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Think about your own professional growth. What bold ambition in your own career will you measure next using an OKR? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I absolutely can't wait to see what you achieve.